How's it going, ladies and gentlemen? My name is RuffledRowlit, and today I want to tell you guys about the actual gimmick we're going to have in Pokemon Winds and Waves. Now, if you guys do not know what a gimmick is, think of things like Mega Evolution, Dynamaxing, Gigantamaxing, Z-moves, Terrestrialization. All of these are what's known as gimmicks in Pokemon games, and guess what? We might have another new gimmick that we already know a lot about and some hints in the recent trailer for what it could be. So sit back, relax, and let's get right into talking about this. So we're going to start things off by checking out this one post, which I think is a really important post that we take a look at because it kind of gives us a very good indication of what we could be expecting. So the post right here, as you can see, is from Millennium Pokemon or Pokemon Millennium, which is an account. I think they are, I think they're Italian if I'm not mistaken. But here's what they actually had to say, which is Pokemon Winds and Waves analysis. As has been the case since Pokemon X and Y, the Japanese logos of the games always hide a symbol that later is connected to the generation's main gimmick. X and Y had Mega Evolution, so they had the what do you call it? Like a DNA logo in the actual, or DNA design in their logo, right? Pokemon Sun and Moon had the Z Crystal, right? So Z Crystals for Z moves, which was in the logo. Sword and Shield with the Galar Stadiums, right? And Dynamax, which, you know, is what we already are aware of. I think they hinted that with like some of the red stuff. And then Scarlet and Violet had the Terra Crystals, which I think were hinted somewhere as well in the logo, kind of vaguely in the Japanese versions. Oftentimes never in the English versions. You'll see the English versions never seem to have really much of an indication or any sort of like thing. But if you look over here, you'll notice in the Japanese logo, you guys can see there is a little icon right there. If you guys can see where my mouse is pointing, right there. So like this is what we're talking about right there. So it's in both logos. It's up here and it's down here too. And if we go over to a specific website, which is none else than our lovely fellas over on PokeOS, they actually have an entire page about stuff that was in the Pokemon leaks. And in the Pokemon leaks, they already sort of talked about this gimmick, right? Which is known as the Majin gimmick, right? And here's what they said. A newly surfaced GIF showcases a gameplay gimmick. Internally, it was codenamed to be called Majin. The gimmick appears to be linked to a weather-based move or effect. Again, we're going to the Winds and Waves region, with Winds and Waves as the name of the games. Those are natural phenomenon. They are weather, right? They're weather-related. Winds and waves, right? The motion of the ocean, baby. They're intrinsically connected, and the fact that we have a gimmick that's also connected to weather-based moves or effects makes sense, though its exact mechanic remains unclear based on the available footage. There is still no confirmation about this gimmick. A mechanic on the shared video that has surfaced, take everything with a grain of salt, which, yes, you guys may remember this image of like this gif of Pikachu where you can see it's a normal Pikachu, but it's got like a red aura around it, and it's almost like Ditto kind of bubbling around, and that's what the gimmick is going to look like. However, we do know that certain Pokemon will get a special version of this gimmick. So pretty much any Pokemon will be able to have this kind of thing going on, but not everybody's going to have a special design that's going to look similar to kind of how Megas, like, you know how you have Mega Evolutions and then you have, you know, Dynamax, but then also you have, like, every Pokemon gets Dynamax, but not every Pokemon gets a Gigantamax, right? Like a special version. And that's exactly what this gimmick might be like. Now, if we go further down here, we can look at the Majin system, and apparently the Majin system appears to be a distinct type-based gameplay mechanic, likely tied to environmental or transformation effects rather than traditional gym battles. So you will be finding these research labs, right? There's going to be a Fire Majin research lab, there's going to be an Ice one, a Ground Majin research lab, a Rock Majin research lab, and a Psychic Majin research lab. There's also a Ghost-type Majin asset, which is also present in the asset list, but no mention in the map of a Ghost Majin research lab. So that is not mentioned anywhere, interestingly enough. However, we're going to go further down here if you can find any more information about this. So there are the assets, right? Previously suspected, Majin appears to be an internal name of a major Generation 10 gameplay mechanic. Its exact functionality remains unknown, but is still likely to be tied to environmental or weather-based effects, supported by earlier leaked footage showing Pokemon deforming or transforming under environmental conditions. And they see here, summary report list, multiple Majin-related script assets. Majin, Esper, Majin Ghost, Majin Hono, Majin Iwa, Majin Jimin, and Majin Kori. These strongly suggest type-based Majin variants. So, again, Psychic, Ghost, fire, rock, ground, and ice. At this stage, it's again unclear whether these assets refer to boss encounters, transformed Pokemon, environmental zones, weather states, special trials, or events. However, their existence confirms that Majin is not a single effect, but an entire system with multiple typed variations. So yes, similarly, again, to how we have Z-moves and how we have terrestrializing and all that kind of stuff, it seems like there is going to be some sort of Majin research facilities which we are going to have to go to either battle something, to do something, or something's going to happen there. Maybe it's an area in the map. For example, we have the one called Majin Fire, right? So maybe that's going to be in one of the lava areas of the game where there's like lava and stuff like that, and they have a research lab there to study how that, like a specific Majin, because we have been also told there's supposed to be Majins and these sort of gods, right? These interesting, weird gods around this region, because again, we are going to Southeast Asia, which has cultures that have different sorts of gods and deities that they believe in, and it would make sense that each island potentially has its own deity, its own guardian, or own, creature that they worship, and then as such, because of that, we would then also have, more or less, a reason to go here and explore, a reason to go here and, how would I put this in perspective, to research, essentially, right? These different typings and how these different gods are affecting the actual area. They're affecting the Pokemon typings and the effects on the Pokemon that have the Majin connected to them. Because we also did hear about potentially there being some sort of connection between the Majin Pokemon and some sort of gods, right? Some sort of god Pokemon or deity Pokemon, which they're connected to, which essentially gives them the power to use the power of the gods to essentially reinforce their strength, right? This is something we've heard about before, which also makes sense. It kind of fits in really well with all of this. We go further down. They also have, again, some mentions about it. Rather than enforcing a strict numerical order, reusing three-pillar structure, iterating on with a new mechanic, Majin, and expanded boss categories. Again, we spoke a bit about that before. And then at the bottom here, they have a kind of a big compilation of a bunch of different stuff. So they say here, now, if you taken together, these repositories summaries strongly suggest that Generation 10 of Project Gaia is built around biomes rather than linear routes, and deeply tied into environmental systems. Again, featuring a major weather-based mechanic, Majin. So I think the research facilities are going to be placed in specific locations where those specific, like, natures are taking place, right? So in the case of Psychic, it might be an area which has a stronger psychic power. For Ghost, it'll be the Ghost Island, because we know based on the leaks that there is a Ghost Island that you can explore, right? So maybe this Ghost Island has some sort of, like, a deity that's causing certain Pokemon to get affected by this Majin environmental ability and changing that to be that way, right? And then Fire could be, a lava area, which we've seen in the trailer already. Rock could be just a rocky, mountainous part. Ground could be an underground place. And Ice could just be the icy, windy, blizzardy area, right? So it all makes complete sense. If you kind of put it all together and stack it all together, it makes sense. So it looks like the biggest takeaway from all of this is that the upcoming Pokemon games feature, at least based on early leaks and stuff, seems to be somewhat connected in some way, right? So the multiple different elements and environmental changes. Does this logo indicate any of that? Well, if we look at it, it has the shape of a Pokeball and then almost a lightning shape to the left and right? Like if you look at the actual shape of how it goes like the lightning here, right? Which could imply potentially, again, I don't know, could potentially imply that, again, it's related to weather. It's all weather. It's all related to weather, which makes sense. I mean, look at Pokemon Winds and Waves. The entire game has a constant reliance and a constant reference to weather, right? Wind, when it's windy, that's a natural phenomenon. It's an environmental thing. Waves are caused by winds, right? And the motion of the ocean, the rotation of the earth, causing waves to happen. And as such, waves are also an environmental thing. And as such, you could assume there will be other things like rain or lava or whatever. These things could also be environmental things which could be affecting Pokemon and stuff. And as such are a part of the overall theme, right? How Pokemon, these deities, affect the region and how, of course, we as humans interact with the Pokemon there. At least that is my theory. Again, I don't know. That's the way I'm looking at this. But I'd love to know your guys' thoughts and opinions on the gimmick itself. Now, how will this gimmick actually function? That is a big question that I think you guys have, that I have, I think a lot of people have. I'm assuming that the functionality of this gimmick is most likely going to be, well, somewhat battle-based, right? Like, it's going to be battle-based in some way, because I'm pretty sure they want to make sure that when they make a gimmick, that they can also pull it into something like Pokemon Champions. So it's going to be battle-based in some way, but what I think what it's mostly going to do is just boost the stats of a Pokemon, right? Or boost a Pokemon's output in some regard. So, for example, if Pikachu gets boosted but one deity, it just becomes that blobby thing we saw there, right? This blobby little mess, and then as such, because it becomes this blobby mess, and now it has higher stats, and it can do more damage, something like that. Or maybe it actually changes how some of its attacks works. Maybe, potentially, like, a deity that's a fire type might add on a secondary fire typing to the Pokemon. So if it's a Pikachu, it becomes electric fire. Or if it's a Pokemon with dual typing, you remove the secondary typing and replace it with the deity's typing. That is something potentially that could do as well. Essentially, it's the idea of the environment affecting the Pokemon. And again, the godly Pokemon having their interactions with them as well. Again, it's all theories. I could be completely off my meds here, but I don't know. But based on the leaks, that's what it could be implying. So I'd love to know your thoughts and opinions in the comment section down below. And that's going to be it for this video, guys. Hope you did enjoy it. If you did, then drop a like down below. And I'll see you all in the next one.